back, everyone. We're still here in Washington, D.C. We have sitting with us Michael Yon. He's a war correspondent who's covered more than 500 protests. Michael Yon, real pleasure having you on.
Good morning. Here we are in Washington, D.C. at wonderful Black Lives Matter Plaza. And as you know, on Wednesday, the big events happened at the Capitol building with Antifa leading the way and using agent provocateurs to basically guide Trump supporters into the Capitol building very successfully. Ended up with 5 people dead, 1 police officer, and 4 unknown people. Well, we know one of Ashley
Babbitt.
Babbitt, yeah, Air Force veteran, unfortunately was shot in the neck. And we can see by the videos that we've been looking at and the photos and physically being present. I was not present for the shooting. I did not go inside the building. I was outside the building watching the activities out there. We saw a lot of agent provocateur activity with Antifa using Hong Kong tactics, using wearing the same sorts of masks that they wore in Hong Kong. As you know, I was in Hong Kong for approximately 7 months until they finally kicked me out. So I was in about 100 protests, and 100 of the big protests and many of the small ones. So I'm very familiar with their tactics, very familiar with their procedures and how they operate. And we know that Antifa was actually in Hong Kong learning their tactics, and they bragged about it quite a lot. They brought a lot of the tactics back from Hong Kong to the United States. Of course, these two movements are completely separate. They're completely unrelated. But since I spent so long with the Hong Kongers, I can spot their tactics here quite quickly. And so I saw quite a lot. For instance, wearing the goggles and the same sorts of 3M masks and that sort of thing. Because this requires the kind of analysis that only Epoch is doing at this time, you in particular, because there's probably thousands of videos to digest. But what we've seen so far, and being physically present, Antifa clearly led the attack. That was utterly obvious. For instance, outside during a part of the attack, when there was much gas fired and I believe rubber bullets, I'm not sure about that. They were throwing flashbangs, that's clear, we were right there. There was a lady on a megaphone saying, "Send up the mask, send up the masks." She said it over and over. It's on our video and others. That's a clear Hong Kong tactic that I've never seen in any other war and conflict, which is Hong Kongers would constantly say, "Send up water, send up masks, send up shields." We saw shields. That's what they used in Hong Kong. That's what Antifa is constantly using. You see, they show up with their homemade shields often, or shields that they've stolen. And so, yeah, there was Antifa written all over this.
So tell us about the standard operations of Antifa, because of course you've gone to hundreds of protests, you've witnessed them, you dress in all black typically when you go to these, and so you're able to merge with them pretty well and observe how they act and how they behave. What are their normal tactics?
They use a lot of agent provocateurs, Antifa does, and they are constantly trying to actually, if you read the Anti-Fascist Handbook, which you can get on Amazon, I've read it in detail, what we saw there at the Capitol was right out of the handbook. It was the playbook. And in other words, show up wearing your enemy's clothing, waving their flags, and do things while, basically false flags. That's why they call them false flags.
So in the actual Antifa handbook, it instructs them to dress up like the people they're trying to basically attack or oppose.
Yeah, that's why we call these false flags, because they're bringing and waving the enemy flag, which is Trump supporters' flag. They're waving Trump flags and doing violence, or arson in some cases, not this time, but attacking police. They were attacking police using Hong Kong tactics out in front of the building outside that I photographed. You may see that photograph. Maybe you can show it to your viewers. There's a lot of gas. A police officer comes out with a rifle, and he's got his light on, and you see people, shrinking back. They were using Hong Kong tactics while they attacked the police. Now, when I say Hong Kong tactics, the Hong Kong resistance that I was with for approximately 7 months were the finest insurgents I've ever seen. They had moral high ground. They did not steal stuff. I saw people doing stealing. One guy stealing a lamp. Hong Kongers never stole anything. I'm talking about the Hong Kong resistance. They didn't steal stuff. They actually paid for stuff at times. They didn't break people's shops that were not actively, provably working with CCP, right? The Hong Kong protesters, resistance, they had the moral high ground with me and with everybody who really knew them. Antifa is the opposite. They're clearly criminal elements. I'm out with them all the time, whether it's Portland and other places. I mean, we were just recently in their kitchen at the Red House over in Portland. We drank their coffee literally and sat by their fire in their camp, their occupied zone in Portland. So we're quite familiar with what they look like, what they do. They're often on drugs. Now, keep in mind, there's different elements of Antifa. There's that element that would occupy the Red House. That's not your A-team. What we saw in the Capitol building is your A-team. That's like your Special Forces Antifa. Those are the guys that come out for special actions. So that's your 1% of Antifa. On the pie chart that I've shown you before, that I drew out for you on paper, that's your tiny sliver. That's your Special Forces of Antifa. That's what we saw in the Capitol building. They know exactly what they're doing. They're well trained. They're well organized. They show up with the gear that they need. They've got the statements ready to say, you know, she's dead, that sort of thing. They come out. They make great statements for the camera, sound bites. These guys are professionals.
You mentioned agent provocateurs. What's an agent provocateur?
An agent provocateur is one that comes in, and this is an old tactic that goes back centuries. They come in and they harness the energy of a pre-existing movement or protest. They may have arranged the protest of their enemy. They may actually arrange it and like call for a protest. And they'll do it under the false flag, right? So in this case, let's say Trump supporters. I believe actual Trump supporters had a real rally. Trump called it himself. So he gave the speech at the Ellipse in the morning. So they basically hijack your horse, right? So they come in, and in this case, after the speech at the Ellipse, you had to walk, you know, pretty far over to the Capitol. So people were left the Ellipse to go to the next rally at the of course, went to the Ellipse to hear President Trump speak, right? The next rally was at the Capitol building. So as Trump supporters started to go to the Capitol building, where we went next, that's when I started seeing APs that were like, this way, keep coming forward. AP.
I saw them too.
Right.
Yes.
And so people are like, come forward, keep coming, keep coming. Those are APs. Go over the wall. They had set up the bike rack barriers that they had taken down and used those for ladders, right? And so you had people, APs, helping people get over the wall, right? So I stopped, got video of their faces, photographed them, clear AP work. Come this way, go up, come on, there's still room, you can get in. Come on, you need to come up, this is your job, this is your chance. You know, stand up for your country. Waving huge Trump flags, got the rebel flags out there, you know, false flag. That's why they call it false flag. Meanwhile, you've got Trump supporters going, no, there's Antifa here. Antifa start attacking the police. They're like, that's not us. That's Antifa. You can see it on many videos. You can see one, what appears to be a Trump supporter. It's on an Epoch video that I don't believe is published yet. I saw the video yesterday of a guy with a Trump sticker on the back of his helmet starting to break a window with a truncheon, right? And what appears to be a Trump supporter comes to bear hug him and grab him back. Two other what appear to be Antifa start to grab him. So it's on your video, on an Epoch video. In any case, these are clear agent provocateur actions. Wearing Trump's, this is why we call it false flag. It's an old technique that goes back centuries.
In terms of identifying markers between Antifa members, how would you identify them?
Usually cells will have their own markers. This is why when I go to protest, I'm often on the edges of the actual action, because what you'll see habitually in every country I go to, cells will tend to sit on the ground together. And you can start seeing, you know, commonalities in shoe wear as an example, or tape on the shoulder, or lights on the shoulder, or markings on the helmet, like that guy. I'm not sure if the guy with the Trump sticker on the back of his helmet with the truncheon, if he had ACAB written on his helmet, but another one did, according to another source.
What's ACAB?
ACAB is all cops are bastards. So when you see ACAB, ACAB, written, usually it's magic marker or painted, that's a clear Antifa sign. It couldn't be any clearer. Trump supporters never come up with ACAB.
Now, you'd mentioned one of the individuals who was smashing this window had a Trump sticker on the back of his helmet. I know we were discussing before, and you mentioned that this was something you had been told ahead of time that these individuals would be using as a sign to signal to each other. Can you tell us about this?
Right. I was told it post facto, actually, because I'm constantly looking for for signs, because anytime a cell goes to action, or often, if they're a really good cell, their signs and symbols are very difficult to see actually. But in some of the Antifa, like their special forces type, can be a little harder to spot. But they will be close together typically. Often they'll have radios, but in some cases they're now more hidden, right? So I'm always looking for antennas in the back pocket or something like that. I'm always looking for common shoes. Often people will have the same shoes. Often they'll have something. It might be the same color something. And so that they can recognize each other, right? But this is intercell type stuff as well, right? So in other words, when there's multiple cells working with each other, they need to be able to recognize each other. If it's just a four-man cell, they already know each other, right? So they don't have to have their own markers, right? So, but you could see out there were quite a few cells. I don't know their cell size. I'm trying to figure that out, but that can vary. But usually it'll be like 4 to 8 people.
Now, in terms of what you saw with these agitators, with, say, you mentioned Hong Kong tactics, can you tell us briefly about the tactics and procedures that are specific to Hong Kong? Like, how were they behaving, and how could we prove in any way that those same tactics and procedures were being used by Antifa?
Shields is one. For instance, you never see Trump supporters with shields. And Antifa constantly uses shields. Hong Kongers, of course, use a lot of shields because they were getting hit with rubber bullets. Umbrellas, I didn't see any umbrellas out there this time, but often you'll see them out there with umbrellas. The Hong Kongers can use an umbrella in like 1,000 different ways. And I mean, I didn't know you could do so many things with an umbrella, but I learned a lot from Hong Kongers, and so have Antifa. And so, although I didn't see any umbrellas this time, but one of the things that Hong Kongers are very good at is just handing off gear, like, here, take my mask, right? And they'll just hand it off to anybody within their outfit, right? And so, again, at the attack on the front of the Capitol, a lot of gas was going out. The ladies on the megaphone, send up mask, send up mask. That's straight out of Hong Kong, right? Send up mask, send up water, send up shields, send up whatever, goggles. And so that's what we saw during the attack. She kept asking for masks, right?
Now, another thing we saw is individuals changing their clothes on the scene. I understand this is also something, it's very odd behavior. It's something also we've seen with some Antifa members. If you can tell us why they do that, and some of the incidents we saw during the protests on January 6th where people were doing this as well.
Right. They're just harder to track when they change clothes, right? They can egress and ingress as well. They can go to the action in one set of clothes, do their Superman change, and then egress after they change clothes, right? In Hong Kong, they would often do this under umbrellas. So all of a sudden, all the umbrellas pop out. They make a little canopy of umbrellas, change in there very quickly, fold umbrellas, new people come out, right? And so this was a very common tactic. I see that tactic being used with umbrellas in different parts of the United States. You can see it on videos, or you can see it when you go out there. But here, they didn't bring umbrellas, but I saw one, for instance, changing under a flag, right? And it was clear Hong Kong tactic. I mean, somebody was under there, you could see changing clothes, right? And then we saw that as well inside the Capitol building, right, on videos. I didn't go inside the Capitol building. I saw it on other people's video, right? So that's a common Hong Kong tactic, to bring change of clothes in your backpack, or to wear two clothes to begin with and just take one off, right? Now, one thing to always watch for with change of clothes, this is basic spy craft 101, is they rarely change shoes, right? So the shoes will tend to be the same. You don't usually bring 2 pairs of shoes,
And
right?
the backpacks, yes.
Yeah, they don't usually bring 2 pairs of shoes. They might not. They'll usually have the same shoes.
And in terms of the way they were involved, people are confused over what they did exactly. Some people say, oh, the destruction was all Antifa. Some people say that the ones leading it were Antifa. You've mentioned most of the ones who were agitating were Antifa. How would you say their involvement worked?
Typical AP work, typical agent provocateur work. You basically go to often a pre-existing crowd, and this is right out of their handbook, but this goes back centuries. This predates Antifa. It's just like, martial arts. It goes back many centuries or maybe longer, and it's just passed down generation to generation. It's old knowledge. You've got a group there. You can harness their energy and use it to your ends. Come this way, everybody, just wearing their, waving their flag. This is where it's at. Come over here. Go to here. We're going into this door, right? It's too easy. And once people get riled up, they'll do it. because we're humans and we will go with the herd and right through that door.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. I've been to many protests as well, doing reporting. And one thing I've observed is whoever has the microphone becomes the de facto leader of a protest, because you have individuals going there with no clear direction. The person with the microphone, the loudest voice, automatically becomes the leader.
That's it. And notice, I mean, he who has the microphone has the power, right? I mean, bottom line, MSM. I mean, that's why we've got to confront these microphones on the higher level. But on the tactical level, out there in front of the Capitol, that was the tactical CNN, you might say, was Antifa that day. Leading them right into the action, breaking down doors. You can hear clearly Trump supporters saying, "Don't break anything, show respect." There must be thousands of videos, so I obviously can't go through them all. But you can clearly see many Trump supporters saying, "Don't break anything, don't steal anything," that sort of thing. And there you go.
Yeah, actually, at Epoch Times, we have many videos showing Trump supporters stopping actions like that, stopping destruction, and very clearly saying many, many times, we don't do that, don't break those things, so on.
Right. Yeah, the Trump supporters were trying to intervene. And you can see when the initial attacks were going on, Trump supporters trying to pull them back. And then back from the front line on some of my other video, I haven't even looked at my own video yet, but people right in front of me talking, saying, "I don't agree with this is wrong, we shouldn't be here." There's Antifa all around us. You hear Trump supporters jumping up many times going, "There's Antifa here. They're doing this. Antifa are making us look bad. Be careful. They're going to attack us. There's Antifa all over the place. They're dressed just like us. We don't know who they are."
Now, in terms of the Antifa handbook that you mentioned, did you see anything in that handbook also being played out?
Oh, absolutely. AP work, Agent Provocateur, right out of the Anti-Fascist Handbook, which you can get on Amazon.com, and you should get it and read it. And then you'll understand a lot more about what they're doing. These are old tactics. You don't even need to get it from that handbook. And it's right out of CIA Handbook. I mean, this is old stuff that we also do, right? This is not anything. I mean, this same tactic was used in Iran by a retired Green Beret named Bull Simmons for Ross Perot and springing Americans out of a prison in 78 or 79, right? There's a movie about it called On Eagle's Wings. He basically got a crowd of people. They got into a big protest, and he got them to go do a prison break, and we freed Americans that way. So this can be used. It's a tactic that can be used one way or the other.
Now, Michael, this last question. Of course, at this point right now, it's only a couple days after all these protests. We're still waiting for evidence. We're still assessing imagery and photos and trying to figure out what actually took place. If you were to tell people one thing in terms of your work and in terms of what you saw, what would you tell them?
Well, I am the most experienced living American combat correspondent. I've been doing this for years in many countries. As you know, Hong Kong, that's where we first met. And so war is what I do, not elections, right? And I know what I'm doing when it comes to war. And I see the United States is now clearly going into civil war. It's unambiguous at this point. And so what we saw there, Antifa is helping to rile this up. Black Lives Matter is helping to rile this up. And not just them, we've got outside influence. For instance, CCP is neck deep in this. And so we are facing an information war of unprecedented scope. I've written 3 books on it. Unfortunately, they're all in Japanese because I've been working to try to wake the Japanese up to this. They're also a target. The Japanese are facing the same information war, but in Japanese language, trying to rewrite textbooks for schools, taking hold of teacher unions. Every technique and tactic that you see being used here is being used in Japan, right? And it's being used to split Korea and Japan. It's being used in Korea as well. As you know, I've spent years in Asia, rolling around studying this thing. So it's coming for us now. We have to make a united face to face the enemy. The enemy is CCP and some others who are organic to the United States.
Michael Young, thanks for being on Crossroads.
You're doing incredible work. And I can't believe your show has done such incredible work, whether it's on the Three Gorges Dam and so many other things. And I look forward to seeing your analysis.
I appreciate it. Thank you.